Three, two, one.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Eskin. On behalf of Eskin Fundraising Training, it is my privilege and pleasure to welcome you to our nonprofit empowerment webinar series tonight. Anything goes. It's open mic. And I've been talking to some of my early people. We're going to discuss anything. I'm going to put one prohibition on the table. We're not going to discuss Britney Spears. Okay, you can go elsewhere. Which not to minimize that issue, but everything else is wide open. This is number 59, and you own it. In fact, we're going to learn. We're going to talk about what you want to talk about. We want to know what you want to learn. We want to know what you can share. We want to know what the number one challenge. And this is a learning community. And I have a good friend in Boston, Dr. Chuck Posner, who we grew up literally across the street. And he gave me this. He likes saying the answers are always in the room. And I'm going to say the answers to whatever questions you have are going to be in our digital webinar audience. Not wanting to make a fool of myself by alone, I have recruited a friend and colleague from the past, Dr. Richard Ortega, who we worked together. We were described then that we were both handsome. Today we're still handsome, but we're called distinguishedly handsome. And Richard's just done about everything in the nonprofit sector. Like me, a lot of his time was leading higher education advancement programs. He was the inaugural vice president for advancement at Texas A&M San Antonio. And Richard has been a leader in our professional development organizations, particularly CASE. And what I learned from Richard is the power of looking for truth tellers. And that's people who have the maturity, which might come at 30 and it might come at 80, and the strength of character to tell power. You know, there's an old saying that a broken clock is correct twice a day and nobody is right all the time. And I think there's a tendency in our sector, you know, if the CEO says to do this, if the foundation's chair says to do this, if the president says to do this, if a big donor says to do this, do it. And I think sometimes, however, nobody is right all the time. As fundraising professionals, like Richard has spent their whole career in learning the art and science of fundraising. And I always respected you, Richard, the way that you had the truth to speak truth to power. And I think there's not enough of that. Okay. And that's a lesson I learned from you. So first of all, he's in Helena, Montana. Do you have 125 degrees or what's the weather conditions like there?
It's 95 degrees.
You're gonna have to put a sweater on.
We're suffering. We're suffering.
How did the Ortega family do during COVID?
My daughter's family, her husband and her two young children got COVID.
And how did it go?
Very minor.
Yeah.
Them. So we were fortunate, but it was really scary.
I bet it was. Where are they?
They're here in Helena.
Oh.
So
now have they got the vaccinations?
Yes, now they have vaccinated.
Because I hear that if you recovered from COVID and you've been double vaccinated, you're bulletproof. That's what I've heard.
I hope it's true.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I want to throw something out to the audience, and I'd like to begin with one of our learning community members from Los Angeles. Probably the biggest challenge we face is helping our board members, our volunteers, our administrators in our organizations overcome their fear of asking for a gift. I have worked with community and business leaders who are fearless in everything they do in their life, with the exception of asking for a gift. So I'm going to pick on you, Claire. Why do you think people are so scared of asking for a gift? And what do you think we can do to help overcome that fear?
People are, fear is a normal feeling that we all need to overcome, because fear is fear to the unknown.
Ah,
And
you
when
stole the
we-
words out of my mouth.
Right. So when you are going to make an ask, especially an important ask, you don't know what to expect. And it's very natural to have some fear that you don't know what the reaction of the person will be. You don't know how the conversation is going to take place. You don't know if the person, you want to be careful not to offend the person. You are fearful of under asking, but also you are fearful of over asking. And the truth is that never anything bad has happened to a fundraiser after finishing a meeting with a donor.
I got to tell you, there is no recorded fatalities or even casualties
No.
from getting a no. You're exactly right. Let me move. Joel Batalski, why do you think people are so scared of asking for charitable gifts?
I believe fear is part of built into the human character. And it's not just fear of asking for a gift, it's security, it's fear of asking for a raise. It's just,
Yeah,
as you said, unknown. I mean, it's part of human life is this certain element of fear of the unknown. And I mean, it's not just asking for a gift, it's just life itself. There has to be some fear. I mean, when you drive a car, do you have any fear?
yes.
It's built in, it's nature.
Oh, you haven't seen me drive. I have lots of fear.
So I mean,
I want to get one of those
how do you
driverless cars.
overcome? Some people could deal with it better than others. When you go home at night, do you lock the door? Do you lock everything up when you go to sleep?
Yeah. I set the alarms on too.
So you lock the whole house up when you, is there a fear?
Nah, we turn on the security.
Yeah, you turn on the security, lock everything up. What are you afraid of? You live in a safe neighborhood.
Let's go on. I'm afraid. I want to also, we're going to call on her a little later, but I realize my friend and mentor from Houston has raised money in several different arenas. Barbara Ranowski, why do you think people are afraid of asking for gifts?
I unmuted. Sorry. Good to see you. I do agree with the other speakers. And I think it's particularly people who've haven't done it before. And so if they practice, I mean, let me be pragmatic. If you practice even play acting with somebody trusted, it solves it. And so I do agree. And the fact that play acting and practice solve it shows that it's not a deep-seated fear in most people. It's one that can be overcome. And it's, I think, charming and appealing that people don't know how to do it. And so they need help. It's not a cry for help. It is an indication that they need help. And they may not know it, but once they're taught, they can do a good job. Almost everybody.
Hey, can we put Jim Barshup on screen? Jim, are you there?
I am here,
How
but
do
I
you
don't know
feel-
if it's screen. I'm driving, so
You're driving. Well, maybe at least you're not afraid of driving. Can you talk? You, by the way, strike me, and one of the things I admire you're fearless. Why do you think other people are afraid of asking for gifts and you don't seem to be afraid? And why is that so?
because I don't think that's the right question. I think the right question is not that we have fear,
but what do we do with it? And the answer that I have is I just breathe through it. I play poker. And I think I play poker and love playing Texas Hold'em for one key reason is it helps me to overcome my fears. And when I do so, I play better and I live better. I take more risks in life, not crazy risks, but more calculated risks. And so practicing overcoming our fear, that is the question. How do we do that? And it may be athletics. It could be just ask it until you get used to it. It could be practicing your pitch and your script and developing a powerful message and feeling confident with it. To me, those are things that we can do, tools that we can use to help us overcome our fears.
Great answer, Jim. And by the way, Richard, this is going to be tough because I think everyone has made so many brilliant points. Do you want to add anything to what you've seen is helped people that you work with or better off for overcome the fear of asking? I think it's Richard muted.
Okay, I said something brilliant. I have to do it all over again.
Yeah, do it again.
Okay, so I've mentored a lot of people and who are afraid of making an ask. And one technique I said is, you have a relationship with someone, you've been visiting them, you might want to ask is the next visit the right time to ask for a gift? So you're asking permission. And they might say, pardon?
I said, I love that.
It might say, you can ask for the gift now, or they'll say, oh, my daughter's getting married in Tuscany pretty soon, so this is not a good time, but if they say, yeah, next time, yes, you could ask for the gift. It's like, great, so that takes pressure off of them because they're not being asked right away, but they're going to be asked and they're going to be prepared. They're going to be thinking about what number's comfortable for them as we're wondering.
Yeah, and one of the tricks of the trade that Richard and I like to teach, if you have a boss that's afraid of asking, start them off, not with a hard one, with like what Richard taught me was the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Someone, don't push them for, $40 million. Start them off, say like a 10,000, someone who'd been given 5 and you're going to ask them to go to 10, a relatively easy one. So they'll build their confidence.
Right.
But you really get in, the ask isn't that complicated. And you see it here, you start with a short story, and at some point you're going to say, we need your help. And if you don't take away anything else, you ask for a specific amount for a specific purpose. Let me say that again. If you don't take anything away from this, you don't make it an open-ended ask.
Right.
We live, I don't care if you're buying toilet paper or a Maserati. Of course, it was tough to buy toilet paper last year. We live in a price tag oriented society, and philanthropy is no different. And I think the donor is going to respect you more when you ask for a specific amount. I know, and we learned when Richard and I did teaching about this not that long ago, we said you had to ask, particularly for major gifts, it had to be face to face. You had to get a meeting, which sometimes was the hardest thing. And we learned by necessity over the last year that virtual fundraising can work, particularly with people you have strong relationships with. I know I had someone who had a time schedule. Any chance is Jenny Leighton Guzman on? If not,
hey, yes, I'm on.
Is that Jenny?
Yes.
How are you? Okay, Jenny. I know she has. Well, you have to take little Matt to a rock. What instrument does he play?
My neighbor's actually picking him up right now. He plays the bass.
Okay, I'm going to ask a couple of questions. Jenny and I both went to George Washington University. I went about 100 years before she went. And we met through the Organization of Alumni chapter, okay? But Jenny knows the perspective. She's worked in the nonprofit sector, first for the Girl Scouts and then for an organization that I remained very active with Texans Can Academy, and she was a wonderful development coordinator. I think then you moved to Houston, and one of the sponsors was Texas Capital Bank, and they were so impressed they made her a vice president, and now she's awarding money. And so you have different perspectives, and then I'm going to ask her to talk about a special project. Why do you, Jenny, why do you think people are so afraid to ask for gifts?
Well, Jim, you were one of my mentors when I was in that position of asking for Texans Can Academies. And I feel like, for a lot of people, it's the unknown. It's kind of a lot of what we have already mentioned. But also, if you don't do your due diligence and your research beforehand, it's going to be scary no matter what. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you can't go ask, like you said, for $40 million if that institution or corporation, their typical gift might be $5,000 or $10,000. And then you kind of have to do even more research about, what are they really focusing on? What's their strategy for giving, and where are they really hoping to address gaps in the community, and kind of align yourself with that. And so I feel like you can kind of erase some of that fear if you do a lot of the research, up front, and try to figure out where there's some alignment with your organization and whoever you're asking.
I heard somewhere that God's going to give us either beauty or brains, okay? And so in my case, I don't know how smart I am, and I know I wasn't given beauty. Jenny's one of those lucky people who's gotten both, and she is now Mrs. Houston, right? Mrs. Houston, and competing for Mrs. Texas. Can you tell us a little, and it supports a lot of good causes. Can you tell us about that competition?
Yeah, so this was sort of just random. I applied, and they gave me the title. So that the state competition is the very first competition in the line. And then, of course, if you win, you go on to Mrs. America. So the Mrs. competition is for those of us who are married. And I was also in the Miss Texas USA pageant back in 2004, and then Miss DC USA in 2005. So back then I did a lot of, looking for sponsors to try to help me cover the pageant costs. And of course it was an incredible experience to get to meet so many successful and amazingly talented women from all over the place. But I'm especially excited about this one because of course it's an older crowd, for those of us who are a little bit more established in our careers and lives and kids and all that stuff. And so instead of asking for sponsors for me, I'm handling my own costs, associated with it. I will be asking businesses, family, friends, everybody to support a local organization that serves women and girls in Houston. So I'm looking forward to that.
Hey, listen, I'm going to give you some unsolicited advice. When they ask you what is your number one priority, say world peace.
No, I'm cheesy, but I'm not that cheesy.
Okay. And by the way, I hate to ask this, is there a bathing suit component?
There is. There is.
Is it one or two pieces?
So it's a one piece. It's a hideous swimsuit, but it's it'll be good.
Okay, well, with the right person in it. But Jenny, by the way, too, we met. Woody Allen once said that the world belongs to those who show up. And Andrea and I went to a George Washington reunion in the year 2009. I hadn't done anything since graduating, since Harry Truman was president. And I met some of the staff, and they said, I'm in advancement work. If I can help you organize things in San Antonio, let me know. They waited a day, and they called me and asked me to organize activities. And that's how Jenny and I called an organizational meeting at my house. Jenny showed up. We became fast friends. Do you remember George Washington has a tradition now of on George Washington's birthday holding celebrations all over the world. The very first one was in San Antonio that Jenny and I helped organize. Thank you, Jenny. And remember, Cabinet Secretary Cisneros came in a tuxedo. He got
Yep.
a PhD from George Washington. So
Yeah.
Who else? Who else? Any chance do we have Janet Weiner in the waiting room? Nope.
Doesn't look like
Who
it.
else?
I'm looking at the list.
Okay.
She was trying
Okay.
to log on, Jim, and the link wasn't working for her.
How'd you know that?
It wasn't working for me either.
Janet, if
I had to log in through Facebook to get in, like through my
Oh,
own Zoom.
God. Okay, let's blame Zoom and not Jim Eskin. Can we, Michael, do you have the wherewithal to resend the link to everyone? I don't know, and I apologize because we have she is a corporate global meeting planner, and she's going to share some insights about national meetings and conferences, which I think is will echo about our galas. I'm quickly going through some of our slides here. Who else do we have in the waiting room? I'll ask, let me go back to Richard. Richard, you know, we did well in philanthropy in 2020. By the way, these are some of the upcoming webinars we're having. I'm excited about all of them, but you all have heard about Mackenzie Scott and Dan Jewett. They've given out close to $10 billion unrestricted. 100 million has gone to nonprofits based in San Antonio. And I have lined up about 6 of the recipients, and they're going to talk about what they're doing with the money, how they decided. You know, getting $40 million in your lap, it's not easy to be a big university and decide how to use it. So I think that's going to be a very good discussion. Philanthropy is just, you know, is done well. We hit a record. Giving USA came out about 2 weeks ago. And that's the gold standard for measuring how we're doing. We are up 5.1% over the year before, 3.8 when you adjust for inflation. This really hasn't changed. I think I'll bring Richard into the conversation. You know, for the last 60 years, individuals have made up the lion's share. You know, this year was 69%. It's typically low 70s, 69%. Richard, I always try to tell my boards and everything, go fishing where the fish are biting, and that's in the pool of individual donors. And don't get me wrong, I have nothing against corporations and foundations, but most money comes from individuals. And yet I keep on hearing from nonprofit leaders, they want to fish, pardon me, with foundations and corporations, which are much smaller shares. What is your opinion on that?
We can't hear you, Richard. You're on mute.
That was another brilliant thing I said there. Anyway, so what I heard is that, you know, focus on corporations, foundations, but the reality is it's from individuals. But changing behavior, so people, you know, like my wife runs a nonprofit here. I'm helping her raise money for they need a roof, not a very, you know, of course the roof is failing, so it's really important to them, but we have to convince people to do that. And I had to convince her to get an individual component of the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
You know, corporations, foundations. So, but even the biggest corporations in Helena, Montana, which is only 35,000 people, their large giving is not very large, you know. And so, and convincing their board that they need to step forward and contribute as well as help with raising individuals is a tough change of behavior. But this chart here tells you that is where the money is, you know. But developing the relationships with those individuals is not an overnight. So they make a gift, it does not happen overnight. So that's the other part. I think Jenny's mentioned that I kind of encourage her to develop relationships, and that's really the key to that. Now, you can have relations with corporations and with foundations, and they have a small giving things, but the larger gifts are going to come from individuals if you do the right cultivation, develop the right relationships.
Barbara, you know so much. I'd love to stump you. I'm sorry. Do you know who Willie Sutton was?
Yeah, that's the guy who robbed banks.
And what did he say? He was interviewed once and he said, "Why did you rob the banks, Willie?"
That's where the money is.
He said, "Exactly. That's where the money is." And that's why Richard and I will tell you, you should have a major gift strategy that emphasizes individuals. And by the way, it's really greater than 69% because bequests come from individuals who have passed on. And half of the foundation money is from family foundations. And when you add up half of foundations, bequests, and individuals, you get to 88%. And as Willie Sutton would tell us, that's where the money is. Who else? We have Jenny Moore is in. And I'm trying to think, any luck yet with Janet Weiner? Let's talk a moment about. Yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
here. This is Jenny. I had a question. I just put it in the chat that's
Oh, go, you
related
tell us.
to.
By the way, this is one of our learning community partners who made a presentation. Jenny and Richard Ortega used to work together. She's one of my favorite people. She's a clinical professor in communications at the Department of History and Philosophy at Texas A&M University, San Antonio. And she's going to talk a little more about internships. But Jenny, what's your question?
Well, I had a question because I did not traditionally come from a fundraising background. I'm a faculty member, so I'm kind of learning from the ground up. And one of the types of fear that I experience as I'm fundraising from the perspective as a faculty member trying to grow programs on behalf of students is this fear that when I'm making the ask that people think that I'm using them because I know that they have funds to give. And so as I was a practicing journalist, and so my relationships with people were always really critical, and I wanted them to know that I was genuine and interested. Is that a normal fear? And what do your panelists think about overcoming that?
Jenny, that's a great question. Richard and I have a deal. If it's an easy softball question, I take it. If it's a more challenging one, he takes it. So Richard, I'll let you start with that one.
So you're fair that they're going to think you're taking advantage of them, and they might be wondering, why aren't you asking for money? Because these are people who are philanthropic, probably, you know, and so they're used to giving money, and they're looking for your passion, and you're looking for something that has meaning, and hopefully that thing that you have meaning has meaning for them too. There's a good match, and that's what you want to do, and so that helps you could get, you know, over that. They're going to give money away. Probably. And so, but if they feel that it's making an impact, it's making a difference, and you can convey that, then you're more successful.
I will say ditto to Richard, and I'll say this. If you think that fundraising is a zero-sum game, in other words, Jenny, for me to get a pint of blood, you got to give up a pint of blood. You have to look at it, and I know this sounds a little corny, but you know, Richard and I have asked probably each of us hundreds of times. I honestly believe the donor gets more out of the solicitation than the beneficiary. You know, you give them a chance. Hopefully you've done homework and you have aligned the mission of your nonprofit with the priorities and the values and the interests of the donor. And you're not taking something away from them. You're actually growing their human potential. And I know that sounds a little corny, but I have been with people who've given $1,000, not too many occasions, but I've been people who've given in the millions. And I honestly believe the donor gets more out of the transaction than the recipient. But you have to have that attitude. And I've been there. I've been there where donors, you know, they're so excited, you know, and they're giving for the right reasons. And so you're looking for people who are giving for the right reasons and who, again, their values, their interests and priorities are going to align with the mission of your organization.
Those are
Could I-
great answers. Thank you.
Could I ask a question here, Jim?
Yeah, you sure can.
So you say you ask for a specific amount for a specific purpose.
Yeah, and I say
You've
that
done your
over,
homework.
I'm going to say that over and over again. If you don't get a single thing out of this webinar, I can't tell you, it hurts me when people don't ask for a specific amount. It hurts.
Okay, you do your homework, you ask for a specific amount for a specific purpose, and the person says no. Now, what do you do?
Okay, Richard, I'll take that first. Okay.
Okay,
First of all, I say the best fundraisers, and maybe in heaven, Richard and I, we might get somewhere in the top, I don't know, 10 million of fundraisers. You're going to get no, okay? And
Right.
I got to tell you something. You know, I supervise 2 teams that are fundraisers. When a fundraiser brought me back a no, I'd rather have a yes, but that told me they asked. And I'll tell you, you know what's even worse than no? Guess what, Joel?
I don't know.
Maybe. And that goes on, maybe
All
later.
right, but what do you say? If
Well,
the
and
person
then
says
you thank
no,
them. What you do, well, first of all, and I will go to Richard for some help on this, you thank them for their time, you thank them for their interest, and then you got to know, I would keep them on some type of communication flow so they're being updated on the project. And maybe, you know, you always want, it's the toughest part is to understand, why did they say no? Was the amount too much? Was the timing bad? Was the project not a good fit? So you try to, and sometimes it's not easy to find out why they said no, and you can kind of reposition your strategy for a later ask. But to me, no is not end of the world. I rather have a fundraiser bring back a no than that means they're going out and asking. You know, and I think the more times you swing the bat, the more times you're going to hit the ball. Richard, I'll pass it over to you.
well, I'll just echo what you said. You don't want to go to the amount. You don't want to start. That would be the last thing. So you want to ask, is the timing, you know, would another 6 months be something you can consider this gift? So you're still talking about the same amount, the same cost, and is it the timing? And if they say, no, it's not the timing, then, you know, I thought that you really cared about the business school, let's say it was a business school gift, right? You know, and they say, well, no, even though I'm a graduate of the business school, I'm really more interested in supporting football. So you may have to change, realize that it's the cause that you asked for. And if
Yeah,
those
you-
don't, and if they say, yeah, that's fine, then you can get to is the amount, you know, that we asked too much. Would you consider a lesser amount? Well, before you go to the amount, you consider, could you do it over time? Could we spread this out over 5 years?
Nice. And by the way, if you have properly cultivated them, and that's what we call building a relationship and trust, Richard, most of the time they'll tell you, they'll say, this is not a good time. You know, I got kids in college. I got to pay off 2 divorced wives. You know, they'll tell you, my stock portfolio is headed south. You know, they will usually, if you have built a good relationship, they'll give you, they won't just say no. Most donors know how to say no. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Who else did we have? We got Jenny Moore lined up. Is any chance, I keep on asking her, actually, she is the sister of my sister-in-law, so I'm trying to take good care of her. And she really knows more about conferences than anyone I know. Has Janet Weiner gotten in? Is Don Eskin in? Okay. You know, don't trust family, right? Any other questions from the audience? This is open mic night. What would you like to know? Who else we got in the audience? Clara, do you have any questions? Clara, are you there?
I
So
just
Ja-
sent Jenny a message regarding this book that I read years ago, The 7 Phases of Philanthropy.
Oh, I love it. I love that book.
Yeah. And the reason I am mentioning it is because it explains why people give. And
I love that book.
there are several motivations, and not everyone gives to nonprofits for the same reasons. They have very personal reasons why they give, but it kind of helps you understand and figure out where you can position your donors, because it kind of gives the profile of givers. And after reading that, I definitely don't ever think about a donor feeling that I'm using them, because I do believe that they have the means and they want to share. You know, people that have capacity have no problem giving. They just have a problem with giving to whom, or you know, it's about the person or the organization that is asking, but they want to give and they give. That's why the cultivation is so essential and so important, because you will know what they care about. You know, sometimes they used to care about your organization a great deal, and then they move on. I mean, and that's going to, like, perhaps to me, the most painful things when I approach a donor that I look in the list and in 3 years ago gave $100,000, and then this time they sit with me and they listen, and then they say, we're doing something else, we're working with other organizations. And that is so hard, but you know, you also have to accept that, you know, that sometimes their interests also move around.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, The 7 Faces of Philanthropy, it actually is a little dated now, but I think very relevant. It was published in the mid 1990s, and it was a research project, the first of its type, of donors of $50,000 or more. Okay, that's what you had to be interviewed. And basically, it identified people who give 50,000 or more a year, not lifetime. They fell into 7 buckets. The biggest one, Clara, I think was called the communitarian, because I never heard that word before.
Yes, the communitarian.
That's
Yes.
the biggest one. That's someone who says, you know, it could be a car dealer, it could be a bank resident. If I give money to improve the economy, it's going to come back and benefit me. And so it's a great book, and I recommend it for everyone. Who else? Who else is in our audience? Any other questions? This is your, except Britney Spears. And I guess if you want to bring up Britney Spears, we can comment that too, because I have a Britney Spears philanthropy story. Any other questions?
I have a comment, Jim.
Okay, and before we go to Barbara Ranowski, let's go to Joel Batalski.
I think that even though you ask and you get a negative reply, I don't think you should stop. I mean, I don't think you should say, oh, well, that's the deal. I think you should continue, and maybe you ask the same thing in a different way.
Joel, I think you show a lot of wisdom.
You know what I'm saying?
You know what I mean? You show there's a difference. You know, we say we don't want to look at the donors as ATMs. The people, the nonprofits that run away after hearing a no, indicate all they're interested in is a quick transaction. If you know that Joel has passion for, say, Save the Whales, and he says no, continue the communication with them, continue to get input, continue to ask for his advice, and then at a later time, ask again. I'd like to go to Barbara Ranowski. Barbara, you are pretty close to coming out with, is it your second book? How many books have you written now?
Few.
Okay, and it's called Let's Talk, A Guide to Peaceful Problem Solving. I got to tell you a story. I recruited Barbara, I think it was in June, and I said, you know, the nonprofit sector needs to talk more about collaboration. And we said, let's not throw the legal stuff like consolidations and mergers, but just how they can collaborate. And, you know, we have 1.5 million nonprofits in the country. We have 100,000 in Texas. We have 6,000 alone in San Antonio. And I think we all have to do a better job of talking of how we can collaborate. She was my guest. And I think I remember, Barbara, that was on a Wednesday. And you said, Jim, I think there's a book here. You know, I write 1,000 word guest columns. You know, I'm pretty proud of, I get it done in a day or two. I think 2 days later, she sent me a first draft on this book, which is going to be helpful to the nonprofit sector, going to be helpful to business people, to families. Barbara, can you first talk about your motivation in writing this book? And then specifically, I want you to talk about, I think every nonprofit has a big decision to make this fall. And that's, what do we do? I don't know if it's a gala, a luncheon, a golf tournament, or whatever. Do we do it in person? Do we do it virtual? Do we do it in some form of hybrid? How can they have constructive, productive conversations? First, I'll give you a second to talk about your motivation in writing this new book. Thank you. And then address this question, which I think every nonprofit leadership group is wrestling with right now.
Well, the reason to write the book was because when you asked these really good prompt questions and asked me to speak about the general issue of how to work together, and we both felt that giving some legal analysis wasn't really what folks wanted, I then turned to what I like to do best, which is teach. And I teach a course now mostly to children and to children with special needs on the issues you're talking about. And I had a lot of scraps of paper put together, and I have my own little teacher's guide that I give to parents in the schools. But it's always a chore to put everything together again at the beginning of a semester. And so what I did was crank it out so that I could be ready to talk to your group. And so you're the motivation, Jim. It wouldn't be happening but for you. And
who wrote it? I'm butting in. I'm a Budinsky. So tell us, what does it look like for the timeline on the release of this book? Because I think it's going to be of great interest in the nonprofit sector.
Although it was written fast, the rewrites have taken a while. Yeah. And it's in semi-final stages. So we are hoping the fall, but needs line edits, needs new cover. So lots of people helping on it. So I'm hoping September, because it's almost there. So yeah. Thank you, Jim, because it wouldn't happen but for you.
Wow. I'll tell you what, given those comments, I'm going to have an extra glass of Zinfandel tonight. Can we bring Jenny Moore on? Do we still have Jenny Moore?
Yes. Hi, Jim. I'm here. Barbara, I was just looking at your books. I'm so excited to read the next one. That's wonderful.
Jenny, this is unfair. Jenny did such a brilliant workshop and internships, but also she has a background in print and digital media. She's totally unprepared for this question, but I'm unfair and life is unfair. So before you talk about internships, as someone who teaches communications, you know, we're coming out of a period in which COVID was the whole news cycle. It was COVID, COVID, COVID. And finally now, I think we're getting some stories other than COVID's. Do you have any advice for nonprofits, given that the window is opening to say non-food bank and survival questions and health-related questions, how nonprofits can resume telling their stories?
I do, actually. I just completed a 2-day workshop with the Catalyst Project at the University of Oregon. We spent 2 days talking about something formerly called civic journalism, which is now referred to as solutions journalism. And the idea is that reporters and other organizations who are interested in sharing messages and getting the word out about effective problem solving in community problems is to reframe the narrative rather than just talking about the problem, but talk actively about what's happening in the community. So for nonprofits, that means that this is a really, I think, wonderful time to reach out to the press and let them know what you're actively working on, what your community response has been to a particular set of problems, whether it be in the community or regional or at the national level or international. I think the press will really listen right now. So the term I used is solutions journalism. It's
Wow.
not a new way, but I think an important way of reframing problems in the world.
Good. And by the way, do we have Mary Yearwood? I missed her. Mary Yearwood, are you in the audience? Okay. Jenny, let's go to your your first question was. You led a workshop. It was really productive on the power of internships. And if there's one thing we know, that nonprofits have to tighten their belts and probably do more with less. One of the things we concluded that you're probably not going to get free interns, but you're going to get tremendous value. In other words, I think more and more I'm seeing nonprofits tighten their belts and they're paying for work as opposed to paying for people to show up for 40 hours in the office or stay home for 40 hours. Internship is an enormously cost-effective solution for nonprofits. I gave you 60 minutes before. Can you take 2 or 3 minutes to explain maybe how a nonprofit can explore internships with colleges and universities in their market?
Sure, I'd be happy to. We did have a great workshop. I would recommend, I was thinking about you all earlier today and nonprofit leadership and what a challenging year it's been and the amount that small nonprofits have to take on. And I really want to encourage all the organizations to think about what are some of the areas where you need assistance from innovative undergraduates. We at A&M San Antonio just put internship on the degree plan just a couple semesters ago. So I have 200 students in the pipeline for internship. And I'm working currently with about 40 different agencies just in San Antonio alone. About 40% of them are nonprofits. And I receive emails on an almost near daily basis letting us know how happy they are with the students, how energized they are, whether they're virtual or face-to-face. It's really provided, I think, an answer to a lot of nonprofits in terms of how to balance workflow, how to work on a special project that just isn't getting done, and also in terms of just ideation and getting new ideas about how to move forward. Our students, like lots of students across the city, are really wonderful at social media, producing newsletters. They're very digitally inclined. They're digital natives, as we say. So think about how the purpose of our workshop was to remind nonprofits that an internship could be a really valuable part of the organization. We talked about how to structure it. If anyone wants to get in touch, I'd be happy to talk offline about that. That's it in a nutshell, Jim.
That's very good. Hey, Michael, let's take one last stab. We've learned when the internet goes down. Can you see if you can send the phone number to Janet? I hope she'll see that, and we've done that before. Okay.
I did send an email a little earlier that had the phone information.
Okay, because she said she couldn't get in with the password, but we've had a rich conversation here. We're continuing. This is your night. Any other questions? Mary Yearwood, are you there? Okay. Who else? Michael, who else do we have in the waiting room? Do we have Don Gleason?
I don't see Dawn.
Okay, I know. These are all people who can owe me a beer when I can go out there. Okay, who else? Who else do we have in the waiting room, Michael?
We've got Al Hartman.
Let's bring Al Hartman on, okay?
I
Al,
think his camera's on. Yeah.
Al, come on. And Al Hartman, he's going to talk about branding. Al, can you join us? Also, Al's on the board. Hey, Al, how are you? He's on the board of the University Health System Foundation. And by the way, can you give maybe a COVID-related update on how University Health System, they had an absolutely marvelous congratulations program to give vaccines to the public. No waiting. Al, can you give a little update on what's happening in the University Health System Foundation? And then what's your question?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Because I've lost it on the screen. Yes, the University Health System is still encouraging people to wear masks, but they still have a number of sites for vaccinations, and there's a little concern about the percentage of the population which is either reluctant or refusing to get a vaccination.
By the way, I'm going to interrupt, but can you extend our appreciation to the University Health System team? I've heard so many people tell me they went to a public, it wasn't a private, a public line to get vaccinated from University Health System. It was very well organized, so congratulations. You provided a great service to the community.
I would be happy to pass that word on, because the people that organized it were really on top of it from the get-go and recognized how important the vaccine is and remains. So they played an excellent and a major role in the community in that regard. And as you know, I'm strongly concerned about the element of public awareness. I know you personally have heard me say 500 times that, quoting a friend.
Well, let's be correct. I think it's more like 550.
Well, you could probably even add another zero, but some a major member of the advertising community once said, "You may have the best product in the world, but if nobody knows it, so what?" So my question is basically, how important is it before you meet with your prospective donor that they be very much informed, very well informed of what your nonprofit does?
Hey, Al, I'll give you a short answer, and it's very important. But Jenny, I owe you our next Starbucks coffee. Can I ask you to talk? Oh my God, actually, I'm extending your agenda, but these are some of the most popular nonprofit forms of communication. Could you maybe share what you think would be a plus minus? You know, there's an in-person meeting, there's a video conference, there's telephone, there's email. I don't know if anybody remembers it. There's something called snail mail. Could you, as a professional communicator, instructor, maybe share your perspective on what might be pluses and minuses of using these formats?
My perspective is that you have to use them all, and you have to use them all strategically and well. My students, who are mostly traditional students between 18 and 22, would say, well, we'll just do it all on social media. But if half your population is not on social media, that's not going to serve you very well. So I think you have to do it all effectively.
And by the way, talking about that, we all have our biases. Jim, one thing I love to do is send a handwritten note, because I'll ask you, Al Hartman, how many handwritten notes do you receive every day? Are you there, Al?
Sir, I'm sorry, what was?
The question is, how many handwritten notes do you receive every day?
Do I see or do I receive?
Receive.
if the question would be more, how many do I receive in a month? And that might
That's
be
my
true.
point. My point is to our fundraisers out there. I love sending handwritten notes because they're going to be stand out. They're going to be distinctive. I'm kind of anal. I had a thing when I was a fundraiser and I got a good gift, and it might be 10,000. It might be a whole lot more. I was going to get a handwritten thank you note in the mailbox before the end of that mail cycle. Now, if I had it like at noon, it was easy. But if I had one, you know, that say I found out at 4 p.m., I could tell you, I personally knew where all the 6 p.m. mailboxes are in San Antonio. The latest one, by the way, is 9 p.m. at the airport. So I'm a huge, we call that the magic sauce, sending a handwritten note, you know, and it's a stamp. I forget, you know, I think you can get such impact on that. Here's another idea. I just wanted, if we don't have any questions, I'd love this. It was during COVID. I have a colleague who makes Mrs. Fields level chocolate chip cookies, and she would drop them off at the doorstep of some of her major donors. I know one gave millions of dollars, but guess what? I found out he just loved those chocolate chip cookies. You know, people also, you know, you can make a lot of money and still like chocolate chip cookies. So another thing is, I know we're now just about halfway in the year. Typically 30% of all the money raised is given in December. I would start, you don't have to do the components, but I would start thinking about your strategy, about your end of the year appeal right now, and maybe thinking, you know, if we're going to be asking, say, the season of giving is a little before Thanksgiving until December 31, what are the pieces that are going to lead up to that? But 30% of all gifts are made in December. Barbara's talked about collaboration. I'm a big proponent that you should make joint requests. Richard, we don't have much time. Any perspective you want to talk about joint requests?
Jim, it's Janet. I'm on the call now.
Janet, where have you been? Do I see you?
I've been on mute is where I've been.
Okay, well, listen, by the way, in full disclosure, Janet is the sister of my sister-in-law. So Janet, I guess you're an outlaw of mine. She is with one of the most respected and largest global travel and corporate meeting planners in the world, Moritz. Can you tell us, I'm just curious, what are you seeing for trends in the planning of big conferences for this fall? And conferences, because I think in trade shows, because I think that will give cues to nonprofits in planning their special events.
Sure, I'll give you the Reader's Digest because I know we're getting close to the end, and I apologize for being on mute. So
I'll tell you what, the next time we get together in Boston, you're buying. How about that? We'll call it equal.
Okay, sounds good. So obviously when the pandemic hit last March and the lockdown started, the industry just came to a screeching halt. That was it, no events, everything was canceled. The good news is we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel now. Restrictions are being lifted, jobs are coming back, hotels are reopening, and live face-to-face events are starting to happen, more on a smaller scale right now. But for my company, we're seeing as we enter the fall, they're getting a little bit larger. And then into 2022, many of our clients and other companies are still doing the virtual meetings. And I think, again, depending on their calendar, in 2022, they'll probably start with a smaller version face-to-face, but continue to do a hybrid model, which is virtual plus live.
Can you take a moment? Is there any hybrid approach you've seen that you particularly like?
Well, honestly, I'll be honest with you, we're just starting the hybrid. I haven't experienced anything with any of my clients right now. I think it's sort of all experimental because of the fact that face-to-face are just starting back. So, you know, and a lot of companies haven't lifted travel bans yet. So I would say probably closer to the end of the year, business travel will start to pick up. But I know some of my clients still have travel bans. Budgets are, you know, being reviewed. Companies haven't had to spend a lot of money on travel for the last 15 months. So they're thinking that, well, we've been able to do things virtually and over a computer. So, you know, why do we have to necessarily spend money on travel? But again, people need to be face to face. It's just human nature to
Right.
want to have that interaction.
Hey,
So
Janet,
unfortunately, yep.
I was going to close. I wanted to propose a possible partnership that you could take to the board of Maritz. I'll take to the board of Eskin Fundraising Training. The other folks might not know, a huge day is coming up on Sunday, October 3. Does anybody in the panel know why that day is so special? That is the day, that's week 4 of the NFL schedule. And our friend, the GOAT, Tom Brady, and the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers are coming to Gillette Stadium. So I'm wondering if we could pool resources and relationships, and we will get tickets to the Sky Suite of the Kraft family to watch that game. And that we won't stop there. It's a home game for the Patriots. I've been reading about Bob Kraft. We're going to go one more minute. Has been lending his plane. We'll pick you up. We won't stop there. We'll put on that plane 2 big Tom Brady friends, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. We won't stop there. We'll have some female companionship. We'll get Jennifer Lopez. I think she's now available. She separated from Alex Rodriguez. At least he got a good seat at the inauguration. We won't stop there. You're concerned about your health. We'll get Dr. Rochelle Owensky, who is from my hometown, Newton, Massachusetts, and she will be supervising your health. So I was thinking that Maritz and Eskin Fundraising Training would put our resources together to make that prize happen. What do you think, Janet?
Yeah. I don't think that's going to happen on my end, but nice try.
You're never subtle. But listen, do you have any questions?
Me? No.
Okay. Well, thank you for getting in at the end here. I want to thank all our Dr. Richard Ortega. We started working when we worked a little differently. I want to thank Barbara Ranofsky, who always has wisdom right on the spot. I want to thank my friend Jenny Moore and Al Hartman. And I want to thank the future Mrs. USA, Jenny Leighton Guzman, and my producer, Michael Lydrant. What we're going to do, we're going to post a very short summary on LinkedIn and Facebook, and then Michael's going to do his magic spin cycle. And so we will send you the recording and slides, and you'll be able to watch this at your own pace. Thank you very much. Next week, we're going to
Nonprofit strong.
We are. Well, everyone type in, what are we?
Nonprofit strong.
Joel, what are we?
Nonprofit strong.
What are we, Jenny?
Nonprofit strong.
Barbara, what are we?
Nonprofit strong, dear.
Okay, Janet Weiner, my outlaw, what are we?
I guess nonprofit strong.
You're not guess, we are. Okay, well, everyone enjoy the evening. Thank you for making this open mic a very rich and enjoyable hour. And hopefully we'll see you next Wednesday. Our special guest is Jay Frost, who is one of the most respected authorities on the planet on fundraising. And I'm very excited. On July 28th, we're going to have several recipients of the Mackenzie Scott guests. Again, they totaled $10 billion over the last year. We in San Antonio received $100 million. We did pretty good. And we're going to have some of those recipients talk about what is it like to get $40 million? Not bad. So everyone stay safe. Thank you for your service and devotion to the nonprofit community. And we will see you next week. Thank you.
Jim, thank you.